Welcome to Drive the Daf, clear, structured explanation of the daily Daf in 20 minutes. You can even follow in the car.
Sukkah Daf Mem Hey begins with a Mishnah discussing the mitzvah of Arava, how it was performed in the Beis Hamikdash, how it was placed near the Mizbeach, how it was leaned against the Mizbeach, and what else happened with it, including the halachas of the end of Sukkot. The Gemara then goes on to describe in more detail how the halachas were played out and some other related lists of comments that have similar authorship. So first of all, we begin at the Mishnah. The Mishnah says, how was the mitzvah of Arava performed in the Beis Hamikdash? So they first of all collected a bunch of Arava from a place called Motza. That it was, the Mishnah describes it as being below Yerushalayim, down the hill from Yerushalayim. The Gemara will discuss why it has that name. They went there and they collected big plants of Aravas, and they came and they stood them up, the Mishnah says, next to the Mizbeach, leaning them against the Mizbeach at an angle, so that the heads of the Aravos were bent over, curved, arched over the sides, over the side and onto the top of the Mizbeach, not touching the roof of the Mizbeach. They placed it there, then they blew shofar, tekiah, teruah, tekiah, and then they went around the Mizbeach every day of Sukkot, except for the last one. They went around one time, and the last day they went around 7 times. What did they say? They said, Machlokes, Ana Hashem Moshiachna, Ana Hashem Matzlichana. According to Tanakama, Rav Yehuda said, they said, Ani v'hoi hoyishina. Rashi explains, Ani v'hoi is gematria, Ana Hashem. Rashi also explains that it indicates HaKadosh Baruch Hu's 72-letter name. Rashi points to 3 psukim in the beginning of Parshas Bashalach that are each 72 letters long. This is how the 72-letter name is derived. It's the first pasuk read straight, the middle pasuk read in reverse, and the third pasuk read straight. If you line them up and you take the first letter of each, it'll spell out Ani, that first letter being the first letter of the first and last psukim, but since you reverse the second pasuk, would be the last letter of the second pasuk, and the middle letter, the 37th letter of each, spells out Vahoi, and that's where you get to these 2 words which are part of they're indicating the 72-letter name of Hashem, and asking Ani Vahoi Hoishina. Now, when they left the Mizbeach and they concluded the procedure, what did they say? 2 versions. According to one, they said, Yofi lach Mizbeach, Yofi lach Mizbeach. It looks beautiful for you, the Mizbeach. That's Tanakama. Rav Elazar says, they said, Lika v'lecha Mizbeach, for Hashem and for you, Mizbeach. Now, this was during the week. On Shabbos, they did it the same way, the Gemara says, but they had to pick a lot of Aravas before, and they brought it into the Beis Hamikdash before Shabbos, and they placed it in large golden barrels in order they did not wilt and wither. Now, Rav Yochanan ben Breika says that they brought branches of palm trees, same tree that grows lulavim, and they used to wave them on the ground before, and that day was called the day of Chibut Charyas, the day of the waving or the beating of the branches, depending on how you translate that. The last halacha is, this is the last day of Sukkot we're referring to, so we'll describe that the end of using the lulav and esrog, it says they knocked the lulavim out of the hands of the children, and they ate the esrogim. Rashi will explain that it was done out of joy, and it's not, there is no problem of stealing. The Gemara will discuss it more at length on a future daf. Okay, the Gemara begins. The Gemara says, what's Motza? The Gemara says the place was called Kalanya. The reason it was called Motza is because Motza means go out. It was out of the taxes. It was not included in the king's taxes. Next, the Mishnah said that they stood up alongside the Mizbeach. The Gemara quotes a brisa that says that these Aravos had to be 11 amos tall in order that they should curve over the edge and hang over the top of the Mizbeach without touching the Mizbeach itself. The Gemara says, therefore, this proves that they were stood up on the yesod of the Mizbeach, not on the floor. Let's explain. The construction of the Mizbeach itself was built in 3 concentric squares, each one wider than the one above it. The bottom layer was 1 amma tall, and it was 32 amma square. That was 1 amma. The next layer was 1 amma shorter on each side, so there was in 1 amma ridge. The next one was 5 ammas tall, and it was a 30 amma square. And then what above that was 1 amma even smaller, and it was 3 ammas high. So you have the 3 levels. You have a total of 1 amma and 5 amma and 3 ammas for a total of 9 ammas high. That's what total Mizbeach was. And therefore, you had the Aravas, which were 11 amos, gave you 2 amos of extra. Now, Rashi says you need 2 full amos in order to be able to curve over and hang over the Mizbeach without touching the Mizbeach itself. The Gemara says this proves that it was on the Yesod. Why? So Rashi says because since they were at an angle, since the walls of the Mizbeach went inward by an amma on each level, it had to be leaning at an angle. If it was leaning at an angle, you would not have it a full 2 amos to be able to hang over the Mizbeach unless it was on the actual yisod, on the bottom layer itself. And that's the Gemara says, that's the proof that it was placed on the bottom layer, not on the ground. That way you could have 2 full amos and even a bit more to be able to curve over the roof of the Mizbeach. Okay, now the Gemara brings a couple of interpretations of the pasuk in Tehillim, Isru Chag B'avosim Ad Karnes HaMizbeach. The first one relates to this. Isru Chag B'avosim, the Gemara translates as Isru, meaning placed around. So the Avosim was placed around. Avosim, the Gemara translates here as trees. So trees, meaning the Aravas, were placed around the Mizbeach. Ad Karnos HaMizbeach, they're placed around the Mizbeach, and they went all the way up to the Karnos HaMizbeach, to the corners of the Mizbeach, which stuck up even further, and that's a pasuk which supports that they stuck up and leaned over the tops of the Mizbeach. Another interpretation of this pasuk, the Gemara is that this says anybody takes the lulav tied together with the hadassim, it counts as if he brought karbanos. How so? Isru Chag we translate as tying together on Chag, but Avosim is referring to the Aravos, which look like ropes. Avosim we're translating as ropes, and it's at Karnos HaMizbeach. It's as if it is as great as if he did the avodah on the corners of the Mizbeach, meaning he brought karbanos and splashed the blood on the corners of the Mizbeach. Another interpretation of this pasuk, Nora says this: Rav Yirmiyah, the name of Shimon Yochai, Rav Yechanan, the name of Shimon HaBachozi, the name of Yochanan HaBakusi, and they say that this teaches anybody who involves himself in eating and drinking l'chvod Yom Tov, it's like he built a mizbeach and brought karbanos on it. This translation is Isru Chag. We translate as tied to Chag, connected to the Chag. That can mean that this is done for Simcha for Chag, or could be referring to the day after Chag. And we translate avosim as referring to fattened up animals. So if you enjoy fattened up animals, then it's at Karnos HaMizbeach. It's as if he brought karbanos on the mizbeach itself. Now that last statement there had mentioned Chizkiah and the name of Yirmiyah, the name of Shimon Bar Yochai. So the Gemara brings now some more things that he said in that tradition of transmission. So the first thing is that everything has to be used in the manner in which they grow. A mitzvah that involves some plant, it has to be held or set up in the manner in which they grow. It can't be upside down. So, for example, the lulav and the esrog have to be held in the way that they grow, not upside down. What's the proof to that? It's from the pasuk Atzei Shitim Omdim. The walls of the Mishkan were made out of walls of wood of Shitim wood, Omdim, standing up. What does standing up mean? It has to be the way that it grows. That's called standing up. Gemara brings a brisa that says so as well. It has to be put the way that they were actually standing. Now, another explanation of what it means, Omdim, that they stand, that they hold up the gold layer, which was very heavy, and yet these wooden beams or panels were able to hold up the gold layer that's on the top of them. A third explanation is that maybe you'll say now that the Mishkan is gone, their protection and their schus is gone as well. But then we say no, Asam Shidin own them, they stand and they exist forever and ever, their protection and their strength that they give us. Again, more things said by Chizkiah, the name of Yirmiyah, the name of Shimon Bar Yochai. Shimon Bar Yochai said, I, through my merits, can take away the din, the strict judgment against the entire world from the day I was born until now. If my son Eliezer would be together with me, it would be from the creation of the world until now. And if Yosem ben Uziyo would be with me, it would be from the creation of the world until the end of the world that we're able to take away the dinim. Yosem ben Uziyo is the son of King Uziyo who got saras and therefore was indisposed and incapacitated to serve as king. Yosem served as king in his place, but everything he did, he said, this is a decree of my father Uziyo, showing tremendous respect, tremendous kibburav, allowing him to maintain the appearance as if he was running the kingdom, although he was not able to do anything. Another thing that Chizkiah said in the name of Yirmiyah, the name of Shimon Bar Yochai, he said, I saw Bnei Aliyah, I saw people who are striving upwards, they are very few. If there's 1,000 of them, me and my son are 2 of them. If there's 100, me and my son are 2 of them. If there's only 2, then me and my son are those 2. The Gemara says it's true that there are so few, but Rava says that there are 18,000 people that are in front of a Kadosh Baruch Hu, who are within Kadosh Baruch Hu's mechitzas, as it were, like it says, Saviv Shmeina Aser Elef, a pasuk in Yecheskel. It says no, it's not a problem. There's 2 types. There's those who see ba'aspaklaria hameira, and those who see ba'aspaklaria she'enim meira. Rashi describes that as a spiritual thing, which is somewhat akin to as a mashal to seeing through a glass, a clean glass, and seeing through a blocked glass, more like a mirror and not a clean glass. So those who see clearly are very few. Those who are in a Kadosh Baruch Hu's mechitzas and don't see, as it were, clearly, those are these 18,000. Now the Gemara says, now is it so few that see? Clearly, the Gemara says, but Abaye said that there's no less than 36 tzaddikim in every generation which are in front of HaKadosh Baruch Hu's Shechina, like it says, Asher kol choiche Eloi. Praiseworthy are those who copy him. Loi is Gematria Lamed Vav, 36. So that tells that there are 30 that are inside, they are within, and they are within. So why does he say it? There's only the two of them, him and his son. So the Gemara says that the 36 need permission to go into the Mechitzas of HaKadosh Baruch Hu, but Rishon Ben Yochai and his son could go in without permission. Okay, going back to the Mishnah said when they leave, they say either Yovi Lach Mizbeach or Leka Ulecha Mizbeach, for you and to Hashem Mizbeach. Gemara says, how could you say for you and for Hashem? How could you combine two things together with, you say the Shem Hashem together with something else? You're not allowed to do that. It says somebody who does that is Nekar Manayim, is uprooted from the world, like it says, Bilti L'Hashem Levadeh, Hashem is only mentioned alone. So Gemara says, no, they separated. They said, Leka Nachnu Moedim, we thank HaKadosh Baruch Hu, and to you we praise. Or we thank to you and we praise to HaKadosh Baruch Hu. But there are two separate things that were not placed together. Saying further, the Gemara continues, we've seen in the Mishnah, it says that it was performed the same way during the weekday as it was on Shabbos. And Rav Yochanan ben Broka said that they bring branches of lulav. And what is the reason of Yochanan ben Broka? So he says, when the Torah says kapos tamarim, describing the lulav, it says branches of trees. That shows that there are two uses for lulav branches. One is the mitzvah of lulav, and one is the mitzvah of bringing them next to the mizbeach. Rabbanan argue on Rav Yochanan ben Broka because they say, although it says it's red kapos tamarim, it's spelled kapas tamarim, which means only one. Rav Levi gives a different explanation. He says that Klal Yisrael is compared to a branch, or at least a part of a palm tree. The palm tree has one central trunk. It doesn't have branches sticking out all the way up, only from the top, meaning that the palm tree has what we call one heart. The Klal Yisrael also has one heart focused on Avim Shabashamayim, the Father in heaven, focused on HaKadosh Baruch Hu.
Drive the Daf is a project of the Grand Woodlands Shul and is presented by Rabbi Yitzchak Landa. Find us on YouTube or subscribe to daily emails by emailing drivethedaf@gmail.com.